Hello, everybody. My name is Chelsea, and I'm the Director of Outreach here at MADVoters. We're a social advocacy organization with a focus on legislative education and voter outreach. Tonight, we're talking to some of our MVPs. These are MADVoters verified politicians. We're going to be talking about the economic stability of Indiana. And this should be interesting. I know we all have personal stories related to this. We've heard from people. This is going to be an interesting talk. I'm going to go ahead and let you guys introduce yourselves. Lori, we're going to start with you.
Hi, I'm Lori Camp. I'm running for a U.S. Rep in Indiana's 2nd District. I'm running against Rudy Yakon, who took over for Jackie. I am running because there was nobody running against Rudy. Long story short, I saw a post by MADVoters that said nobody was running, and I said, "Are you kidding? I can run. I live in the 2nd District." Thinking I would never, ever hear anything again. And lo and behold, by the time I got out of the shower, someone had said, "Are you serious?" And I was like, well, yeah, because we cannot have, people running unopposed. That is against everything, how I was brought up. I mean, I drug my kid to the polls when she was little in her baby carrier, and to not have somebody to vote for, well, that was just crazy to me. So here I am. And so I kind of had to hit the ground running since this wasn't something planned. My kind of 3 things are obviously women's rights, immigration, and kind of keeping our democracy. But Congress, I like to explain, is kind of our nation's safety net, right? We hold the purse strings. And I kind of think that what we do, the bills that we pass, the laws that we make in Congress should be as low as we're going to let people go, financially, socially, whatever. So, in my bag, I've got Social Security, I've got housing, or urban development, and just a lot of things that aren't kind of micro things that are going to happen here, but are going to keep our whole country safe. And so I don't want to take up too much time because hopefully people will ask questions about things like that. So, but that's why I'm here, and hopefully I'll get good questions about what I would like to enact when I win.
Thank you so much, Lori. Erika, please introduce yourself.
Yes, good evening. I am Erika Watkins. I'm running for State Representative District 4. That's in Valparaiso, Couts, Morgan Township. It's in Northwest Indiana. And so I'm really glad to be here. I am a lot like Lori, so I smiled as she was talking. It's because this is my first time ever running for office. I serve on the school board there in Valparaiso, and many people think it may be a revenge thing. I'm running against Edmund Soliday, and he had a bill that was presented that would have created a hybrid school board, which would have taken me out of the picture. But it's not personal for me in that sense. It's just more so I really do care about people. I don't see myself as a politician. I really see myself as a public servant, and I genuinely care about people. I'm sure many of our platforms will be the same here, and I'll just wait if those questions come about and I'll share that. But I often tell people when I'm out canvassing that if you know the story Slumdog Millionaire, I feel like I embody a little bit of that story, only because I really am my platform. Everything that is there is something that I've experienced firsthand. It's not someone else's experience or their knowledge, but it is really a life that I have lived and or still living, because I am not wealthy by a long shot, and clearly I'm working and running for office, and that's one of the hardest things to do, but I am here and hoping to come out as a winner.
We're really glad you're here, Erika. Katrina, please introduce yourself.
Sure, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you to MADVoters for hosting this panel and inviting me today. My name is Katrina Owens. I'm currently on the ballot for District 32 State Senate. I am running against Aaron Freeman, who was the incumbent. I've lived in this district for 7 years, but I'm a born and raised Hoosier. And there's just no time like the present to run. I have no regrets, right? There's a lot of progress that we have made, but there's so much more work that needs to be done. And because I know that my purpose in life is to pair my heart with my mind and solve problems. it was time for me to join this good fight to do just that for all Hoosiers in this state. And considering the current climate, right, that we're all have been within, and that we're all facing. And so, I have over 20 years of working within public sector and public service. So I am a public servant, right? And I agree with my fellow panelists, right? I'm not a politician, but I am a public servant. However, I think that we have somehow gotten a little further away that politics belongs to the people, and politics should be serving the people, right? And not using politics for power over the people, but to empower its people. So, and protect those that we serve. And so again, that's mainly why I'm here, why I'm running. And my focus areas are human rights, economic security, and infrastructure. But my background is a lot of advocating for all three. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Katrina. Michelle, please introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you, everybody. My name's Michelle Higgs, and I am running for House District 60, which includes 2 precincts of Monroe County, 33 precincts of Morgan County, and 13 precincts of Johnson County. And one of the reasons why I am running is because the hospital where my brother was born no longer delivers babies, but it's a regional cancer center. And the town that my family moved to when I was 14 had some environmental issues around toxic water. And so I moved back to Indiana in 2016 with my family to be near my parents. And I got involved in organizing at that time to help address some of the environmental issues. I also got involved in pregnant worker accommodations, tenant rights, and housing. And the thing that I was finding was going to the state house, we weren't getting listened to. We weren't seeing things change. And so this particular year, when we saw that my opponent, Peggy Mayfield, was going to be running unopposed, it was one of those things where, hey, actually, they've gerrymandered my street into District 60. 2 houses down actually is a completely different district. And so I stepped in fully expecting everybody to go, well, that's a nice idea, Michelle, but we got other people. And of course, as we all have the same story, nobody's there, right? Nobody's coming to save us. And so it kind of started with that and stepped into it and started talking with people. And I want to just give a real quick plug, and then we'll keep going on to the economics. But I just want to say that my journey in stepping into being a House candidate realized that it's kind of alone. There's not a whole lot of infrastructure and support for many of us, especially if our districts are rural in any way. And so I reached out to my other gerrymandered House district candidates in the southern part, and I said, hey, let's do something together. And so we actually have a thing called the Indiana Rural Summit that we are testing this year. And we are now 10 House candidates that cover 25 counties, representing about 28% of Indiana, really to emphasize, that organizing works across all spectrums, but also to really bring attention to the fact that we have to get voter turnout, and that includes rural spaces. And so I'm super excited to be part of this panel and talk with y'all. And
Thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you all truly for being here, our panelists and our guests. So we're going to jump right into it, and let's start talking about housing attainability. I'll tell you from my experience, I got very lucky with my home, but I have a 20-year-old daughter who just moved back into the basement of her boyfriend's parents' home, which I am thrilled about because this means they can save money, right? But I'm very aware of the crisis her and her friends are facing, not being able to find affordable living, and many of them ending up either back at home or in actually pretty dangerous living situations, pretty toxic situations. And this is a very big reality for a lot of our young people right now. Would any of you like to jump in and start talking about this and your experiences and what you're hearing?
Chelsea, I don't know if it's really just a crisis for young people, but just a crisis for all. Seriously, when so I'm at work at this moment, and I'm in childcare, and so I have the experience of working with children and, of course, their families. And so often we have families that are coming to the childcare who not only just need care for their children, but they're looking for housing. And where there was a time where I felt I was resourceful, the places that I could direct them to are no longer available. And if they are available, they're not suitable. Like you were saying, if there are safety measures, there's an employee who works here with my sister, and every day she's talking about her electrical issues. And she waits for her landlord who says he's going to take care of it, but it's the same thing every day. She said, it's the time that I fear that my house is going to catch on fire, because she just keeps ignoring that these issues are coming up. So it's an overall issue that we're experiencing even here. If I could just say here in Northwest Indiana, but we're all throughout the state, and it's an issue everywhere. And Indiana is ranking extremely high, not providing housing for our constituents. And that's really a sad place for us to be. When you think about it, there may be some houses available, but they're extremely high and people can't afford to live in them. And so it's the thing of, do I find a place? Do I keep it? How can I keep it? And so I get to see a lot being in the childcare world because of the things that are coming into here, questions and resources needed. So it's just unfortunate that we're all here and people aren't having a place to stay.
I know when I was doing canvassing around tenant protections and tenant rights, one of the things that was coming up a lot was, again, safety standards. And there were several buildings that on the outside, they looked great, right? They looked fabulous. But then as soon as you went in, you found out they used cheap material. They were oftentimes built in really bad locations, environmentally speaking. And, mold was coming in, and they weren't built to be long lasting. They were built for an extraction economy. And I think that that's one of the things that's really frustrating is when you go to the State House and you're advocating and saying, can we just get some common sense safety standards? And especially because if people are investing in housing in a community, the idea would be that you are wanting a place that somebody is calling home, to be rooted in, to be established, to have that stability. It impacts everything, all the way from education, employment, across the board. And so when the state doesn't listen to that, and when they actually allow predatory landlords to come in, it destabilizes across the board. And so for me, what is that one starting point? And I would say the tenant protections and tenant rights is the place to start.
Thank you both. Yes. And those of us who are familiar with the legislation, we understand that this is a very unfriendly environment to tenants. We do not have a lot of tenants' rights here. All of the legislation has been written so that the property owners have the rights. We have a lot of out-of-state corporate investors who are undercutting home buyers and local landlords. It's just a problem that continuously gets compacted, right? Like you said, Michelle, there is not any relief that is being provided, even though we have experts and strong people willing to testify, but they're not being listened to. So a change needs to be made.
Yeah, I honestly, I'd like to see it on a nationwide level, because we're not the only state. Red states do tend to have less tenant friendly, more owner friendly. But you can look at maps of anywhere where, housing's been turned into Airbnbs. I'm in South Bend. We have complete neighborhoods surrounding Notre Dame that have no people living in them. They're all Airbnbs for the football games, and people can make enough renting out those homes for I think it's 13 weekends when you count all the weekends that parents come into Notre Dame for big events, you know, like graduation, football games, blah, blah, blah. And they can make the mortgage payments on those homes. So it's the whole, you know, the rich get richer and the less fortunate get left out. But I would like to see, at least in Indiana, I mean, you know, there's a big to-do about not letting outside the country buy up farmland. Well, why are we letting people outside the state buy up residential land?
Yeah, I mean, very good point. And I see Katie is throwing up some information in the chat, talking about how the out-of-state corporate investors incur more code violations than local landlords, which contributes to these unsafe living environments that we're talking about. So the reality is either, you know, live in an unsafe environment, pay more than you can afford.
I think also you named about having, you know, small landlords. And I myself am a small landlord. During COVID, we worked with our tenants. It's like nobody's homeless. Like we're in this together. There's a symbiotic relationship with small landlords that are in their own communities. And I think when these outside investors come in, it again, going back to it destabilizes that whole economic structure. And I think what tends to also happen, and we would talk about this a lot, is when you're organizing tenants for tenants' rights, to bring in those small landlords that are advocating equally strongly for tenants' rights, understanding that relationship, because that's again how you build power. And so anything that brings more impacted voices to the table, I feel is where we're going to build the most robust legislation.
But again, that happens when you have people like you, Michelle, who care. And so when you are about people, you make decisions about people. But when you're about getting rich, you make decisions about getting richer. And so Lori already said it, you know, the rich just keeps getting richer. She wouldn't say the poor gets poorer, but I know where you were going with that, Lori, respectfully. But it is that unfortunate piece that is the work that legislators are doing really about people, or it's about how well can we, you know, cushion our pockets. And so when you are thinking, you immediately said, when COVID happened, how are we going to keep our people in these homes? Because that's what it's really about. And I believe that's why we're all here on this panel discussion, is because we really care about people. These conversations won't continue to happen with those who are wealthy. They could care less about how people are living, as long as their children keep going to the colleges that they get to go to, drive the cars that they get to drive. You know, we fit in this category. So we see every day these things happening. So people like us running for office, we can't ignore that. We see it happening every day. I feel the pressure. It is sad to go home. So literally, I'm born and raised East Chicago. I live in Valparaiso. And so that's about a 35, 40-mile difference. To see the disparities from one city to the next, and we're just 40 miles away. It is difficult for me to pack up. I'm here in Hammond, Indiana right now, for me to pack up and go back to Valparaiso and ignore all the things that I see passing. People who care pull people together, like you just shared, trying to find a way to empower all people and not just some people. And so I just want to give you kudos for even thinking that way and bringing your community together with the way you do that, the way that you are. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. In the chat, it was mentioned about HB or House Bill 1113 that was authored by Representative Cherish Pryor this year, or, you know, in 2024. Actually, I had the same thought. Think it would be important to reintroduce that bill because, you know, as our average working families in terms of their salaries, right, and what they can afford and what you qualify for, if you qualify, right, to buy a home, and there are homes that are for sale within a certain price point, and it is of an unfair advantage to corporate buyers, to out-of-state investors that come in with these cash offers, buy these homes from underneath the feet of the family, but that's all they can afford. And there has to be something in place by law that at least for 90 days, right? That they can't come in and buy those from those families, because that's an affordable house, right? And that's, in our community. So definitely we need to push that forward. Of course, we need to beat the supermajority, and while we're all, here too, right? I mean, we haven't had a balanced legislation since 2010. And so that's why that's important too, right? And so we can have some common sense and work together across the aisle, for the better of all of our citizens here in this state. But I would also like to say too, yes, legislators should be held accountable in our law, but also too, we should feel empowered as residents to gather, and with our, there's always a CDC, your community development corps, your housing authorities, go to them, right? Because these, they help build homes in your community. We have HUD funding that comes through here. It's, even Lori said it's bigger than just state, it's federal funding dollars that comes through. Also, there's people that have been there, put their dollars together and purchased homes, right? Or purchased lands. There's just things that we can too come together as a community to help and really advocate again to these not-for-profits that this is the work that they're doing, and express the need. And so you all have a voice in this too. Do know that outside of just us, you have a voice. You matter. There's resources in your community. Advocate, show up. So together we can at least address this issue.
I also want to just piggyback on what you're saying, Katrina, as far as so these out of state, these equity investors, right? They're coming in, they're buying stuff for cash, sight unseen, oftentimes. It's a whole thing. First off, I would say find a realtor, talk to a realtor that's been in this business for a long time. They're gonna tell you there's some things that have dramatically changed over the years that are disconcerting. But also, when these equity investors, it's like they have actually no interest in seeing people become homeowners. So
No, it's money
historically,
driven.
yeah. So historically, we've always said oh, you get on the ladder, you rent and then you go and you save and you buy, and this is how you become part of what, in the community. And so because they are forcing everybody to be this perpetual renter, you also have the young professionals now coming in, they're, into areas, and they keep getting hit with ever increasing rental fee rates. So those go up, which increases property values. It's this whole snowball. And one of the things that I love, especially when we have people representing all different strata of government, is this thing that I call the stay in your lane. What is the responsibility, or what are the things that a state rep can do? What are the things that a local county council could do, or, a federal, and I'll be honest, before I even ran, I kind of had an idea, but I didn't fully understand all the different roles. And I think sometimes when people are seeing their communities change and shift because of these outside investors, it's very easy to blame, say, the Biden administration or whatever, and not realizing that we've had a supermajority in Indiana that they own this. They own this economic situation. And I think that it's up to all of us to come together and say, we've got receipts to show that this isn't working.
And I don't know if you are all aware, but the DOJ did file a antitrust, I think, lawsuit against it's either RealPage or PageReal, the rental software.
RealPage, yeah.
Yeah. And I actually read it this morning. Most of the lawsuit, one of the things that they do is through apartments, they would, so say you're in your apartment, you're happy, you want to renew your lease, right? But there's empty apartments in your building. They would raise your rent at least 1.5%, I think was what the algorithm was kicking out, even though there were other apartments in your building going for hundreds, close to thousands of dollars less. So if you wanted to get the cheaper apartment, you would literally have to move from one apartment to another. They wouldn't meet the market price. That's just one of the things in there. But imagine for, again, people trying to start out getting hit who aren't even smart enough maybe to look at what the market rates are, you know, like look at the rental paper. So you're getting hit with at least a 1.5% rent increase, where you really should be getting maybe a $600 to $1,000 rent decrease. I mean, it's criminal. I mean, it is literally criminal. And in Indiana, for the most part, a tenant has no teeth to go after that. So thankfully, the DOJ is.
I'd like to make it clear for anybody who might be on the call that doesn't understand how the supermajority works. When you're in a supermajority, that means the party that has that supermajority does not need the other party for a quorum, which means the other party, in this case, the Democratic Party, would not even have to show up to work in order for our General Assembly and our legislature to continue working. That is a problem, and that should show you that there is only one party control up and down. So I just wanted to make that clear because I know a lot of people don't quite understand the difference between a supermajority and a majority. The supermajority, there is no trifecta. Yes, we can getting some messages as well. So a trifecta supermajority. So this means that our governorship is Republican, or one party, but we're just going to call it as it is because in Indiana it is the Republican Party. So our governorship is Republican, our House is Republican, our Senate is Republican. In Indiana, we got hit extra hard because then we also have an Attorney General and a Secretary of State who are both Republican as well, which means they basically get to make the laws that they want to, and they get to define things the way that they want to. They get to decide how these are interpreted. And that is a huge problem, especially since in Indiana, a lot of our legislation is written with a lot of holes in it. And that is on purpose, my friends.
That was a good breakdown, Chelsea.
Thanks.
Excellent. So what do we have? 70-30 in the House, 40-10 in the Senate.
Yeah.
And so that's huge. And as Katrina has already said, that it's been that way, since 2010. And so here we are. We know who set the laws, and we know who it's solely affecting. And we also know who's getting rich and who's doing well. And so now we're here trying to make a difference in that. And that's really what we're empowered to do. Everybody who introduced themselves tonight, we're just regular people. We're regular people who see a problem, and we have the common sense to try to, and even wild enough to put our names on ballots, taking chances in hopes of bringing about a change, because we understand that supermajority is affecting everything. I mean, literally everything. And so unless our seats are turned so that we can break that supermajority, have some conversation, get out of these situations about affordable housing, because we haven't even touched the people who live in these houses, can't even begin to pay for them to start. They're not even making enough money to even afford to pay for housing where they are now. And so it's all unfortunate. I think Michelle said it. It's just this wheel that keeps coming. It's just this pressure that we're all feeling. And though it may not directly affect us, but it is affecting someone that we know.
Well, and I see that Katie's asking about homelessness. What we could do, because she sees, as I see here in South Bend, people are cruel to those that are homeless. And none of us knows why someone is homeless. I mean, it could be a whole bunch of different reasons, but you know, coming back to this, when a person who is making, let's just say, a okay living can't find a home, how is someone that's on the margins ever going to find a home? And so as I said, I kind of feel that Congress is the safety net. Like we shouldn't let anybody go lower. So there are a whole bunch of federal problems. The problem with that is, and some of you may be aware of this, Indiana was given some federal monies. It wasn't for homelessness, but for something else, health, and they turned it down. The super majority turned it down. So instead of taking the government money because they didn't want to be beholden to the federal government, they gave that money away, which then leaves the taxpayers that paid these taxes. So we should take that money back, right, and use it. It leaves our people hurting even more. And to me, that's kind of what's inexcusable with our supermajority that I don't know that many people are aware of. And I keep trying to point it out as running for US rep federal. It's not really my basket, but I always say when I get up to talk, if you have a problem with Indiana, think about this. We've had a Republican supermajority for 20 years. They can't fix it because they broke it. And so that's where we are right now. And so we have to kind of go back to square one, just to get state people in so that when people say, hey, here's some money, you can say, yep, we'll use that. And here's how we'll use it.
No, that's a really good point. I'm so sorry because I really needed to chime in there because we continue to create this downfall. So here we are with housing. We have this housing issue. And as Lori has stated, it's not just the people who have jobs who become homeless. And there are a number of reasons that people become homeless. And so those numbers are going to increase for homelessness if we don't have housing, right? And so it's just this cycle that continues to happen. One thing I am grateful to share is that Valparaiso is building a men's homeless shelter. But when you think about it, it's only 24 men. And so when I volunteered this year for the warming centers, there were quite a few men and women who were coming into the shelter. And so, yes, we're servicing 24, and then there's space for families to walk in and have somewhere to stay overnight. But will that be enough? Because those numbers are increasing. Will that be enough? Does every city, every county need to have a homeless shelter? But then you wouldn't need homeless shelters for as many people, at least if you had houses. So it's, to us, it all makes sense, right? But to the other side, it just doesn't click. But again, that goes back to who cares about people and who cares about cushioning their pockets.
The other thing about dealing with homelessness that happens is with families, especially single parent households, where you have a father-daughter or a mother-son, and especially if those children are over a certain age, there's a lot of shelters that will separate, and suddenly that child is now with an adult population away from their parent. And so that can be a challenge. I think anything that advocates for housing first, for stability, is the way to go. And there are so many groups that are leading that. And so I feel like the government's role is to really partner with them. And again, it comes back to what is the intentionality? Are we committed that housing is a right? Like, are there certain things where we go, okay, we're committed that people should have clean air, water, soil to grow food. They need housing, they need healthcare. Like, there's certain standards. And I feel like we're in this situation because we, as a nation, have a sizable group of people who don't believe that housing is a right.
Yes.
And therefore, they're not making those priorities in their budgets, which are moral documents. I want to say budgets are moral documents. The other interesting thing that I learned, so before I moved back to Indiana, for about 25 years, I lived in Los Angeles. And one of the interesting things that I was talking to somebody who had been displaced because of the fires. And they said that, for the 1 year, because of their situation, they didn't have insurance. So they were displaced from the fire anyway. And they had FEMA, but after a year, that all goes away. And so you go from being, you know, displaced because of a natural disaster to now you're homeless and you're in that gray, and it is not too long before you go into the shunned. And so it was a story that I hadn't really heard a lot about, but I think because of what we're seeing with climate change and just so many of these natural disasters that displace people, there needs to be really ways and intentionality of getting people rehomed quickly. And again, charity can only do so much. You've only got so many beds in a thing. People are stretched out of capacity. So government, which is of the people, has to have the backbone and the conviction that housing is a right.
I absolutely agree with that, Michelle. Thank you. And you know, something that I like to tell people when I'm talking about homelessness and how housing is a right and all of this stuff, and you know, they want to say, "Oh, well, you know, they're lazy and what all this stuff." Okay, did you know that 25% of the children in foster care will become homeless within 4 years of aging out of the system? Let's talk about that, right? Are they lazy, or were they not given a chance in life? You know, bringing these little details to the forefront of people's minds sometimes is what makes them stop. Maybe we're not changing their minds right then, but we're making them think. And that's the first step. These are realities for people. The reason that they are houseless, a huge spectrum, right? I've met people who had epilepsy that had a hard time being on treatment and decided that they didn't want to be controlled or treated. You know, we've got people who lost everything to a natural disaster. We have people who were thrown out by family members and are trying to get back on their feet. Medical crises. I mean, there are a million different reasons why somebody will be without a house. And it is not for us to judge. It is up to us as people who care about people to find solutions to these problems.
One of the things I liked that I've been trying to stress is that we've gotten to an almost kind of gilded, as a nation, not us, this gilded age of thinking where if you're born wealthy, you're better than. And luck of birth is just that. When you talked about the foster kids, I was at a Faith in Indiana symposium, and they were talking to one of our Republican county council people, and they want to have the crisis center staffed 24/7, right? Because you don't only have a crisis 8 to 5 or whatever. And his answer was that families need to do better. I mean, that was his answer. And we're all sitting there going, what about the kids that don't have families, or the adults that don't have families, or and they just kind of want to discard anyone that doesn't fit into the mold of what they think a family should be. I mean, you said kids in foster care. The LGBTQ plus community also has a huge homelessness problem issue, however you want to address it, as you said, with families kicking them out, or just, not feeling worthy and having their own, depression is a great way to get homeless, because you can't work and you don't know what's wrong, and we kind of still, mental health is still not as upfront as we should be. So pretty soon the next thing, I mean, you're just sliding down this thing, and pretty soon you're like, oh, I don't have a place to live. I mean, I know people that has happened to. So yeah, I guess my whole thing is we just need to, like you said, we're all like regular people. We just need regular people who care back in government.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, even from a national level, this past June, and I don't know if folks are aware that the U.S. Supreme Court had passed and ruled that cities can enforce fines and public arrest for those that are sleeping and camping outdoors, and also threaten jail time, right? And so that's just a problem, right? That's just inhumane, right? To criminalize those that are homeless. And so from a federal level, for that to pass, but I think from a state, level, that it is our responsibility again to protect our citizens, right? And to not criminalize the homeless in this state, right? But to find solutions and find other states that have found great, solutions to their homelessness within their state. There states that are, right? Why aren't we working across state lines to do that, right? And addressing this epidemic, because it's an epidemic across this country, right? And just doing better that way. But I think, again, we're not going to solve this overnight, but we have to begin with protecting our own people within our state. Yes, it was federally passed, but that doesn't mean that we have to enforce it here in Indiana, right? So again, making sure that we're protecting our people from other laws, because we can do that, is where we also begin.
Absolutely. Erika, I actually want to come back to you. You work in childcare, and as those of us on this call know, we have a horrible issue with inaccessible childcare. Whether it is because the standards are not set and it's not necessarily a safe option, and then these safer options are completely out of people's price ranges. I know women who work specifically to pay for their children's care, and that blows my mind.
Just to add to that, so my sister has 3 centers and 3 homes, and so many of the staff who work here are parents, and so you watch this balance, this fight for balance often, from needing support from the food program that's at the church, really trying to make ends meet, and really a lot of their working here is providing an opportunity for them to be able to at least live outside of here. But imagine what their lives would be like if they weren't at least working here with their children. So we see it every day. And so when we talk about when we started, and we were talking about affordable housing, I was able to slide in childcare, not on purpose, but it is an issue. It is this thing that I get to see. It is this conversation that I have with parents who come in every day. You have some parents that are on vouchers, some that are paying parents, and it's expensive. It really is expensive. But at the same time, trying to provide quality childcare in areas that are urban, that are rural, and making sure that those families and those children get the same experience as those children who would be in wealthier communities. Childcare, you can never pay your staff enough. You can never really support them the way that they need to be supported. They're asked to give a lot and really receiving a little. We've been saying it since this call started, almost an hour ago, talking about how everything is so well connected. It just seems that we just make one decision. If we do one thing right, everything else is right. If we increase, minimum wage, families can live better, and then they can pay for their houses. And if we find programs to support them in childcare, those that have childcare just will do better. It just makes sense that we try to figure out a way to make it work. But I see families coming here all the time, grateful that there are grants and opportunities to be able to help those families. Our childcare partners with Head Start and Early Head Start. So we're able to help families who are not working or going to school, because the voucher program only supports families who are working and or going to school. And so if you're not doing either of those and not finding a seat in a public school setting, there's no opportunity for you to have childcare, which means that you can't work. And so again, the cycle continues.
Yeah, and I will say, in Congress, we have to raise the minimum wage nationally, because we cannot count on red states to do the right thing. And so again, I think that's where, as a congressperson, it becomes super important to, tighten that safety net, from raising the minimum wage, protecting Social Security, veterans benefits, protecting SNAP and things like that, because these are all things that the Republicans, if they get the House or the Senate nationally, we can kiss them all goodbye.
Yeah.
The
And we
other
look
thing
at the
too
numbers
was,
all the time. I'm sorry, Michelle, go ahead.
yeah, no, the other thing too, we saw what happened when the child tax credit was brought back.
Mhm.
So we need to make that permanent. The other thing too that I just want to name is we don't talk about the loss of lives in COVID. Many of those were older family members that helped cover childcare. So we lost a huge number of people, and I think that uh, going back to even, what do we pay childcare workers? What do we pay special ed workers? Like there's such a glut. And to me, that is a space also where the government can come in and help to give, whether it be grants, whether it be education grants. You want to, we need more teachers in these fields. We need more providers. So what do? Let's support that education so that they can stay. Let's support that infrastructure. And I think it really is bringing everybody to the table to think about it imaginatively, to look at it as an investment in the long-term health of a state. Again, I just sit puzzled that we're going to be so pro-business. I think I saw a statistic. We were number 11th in the nation for pro-business, and yet we were second to last for quality of life. Right there, I'm going, what are we doing, folks? That is not sustainable at any point. It's almost like we're marketing our state. And then after a year or two, anybody coming is going to go, well, this was just fake. This is all fake. And so if we can't improve the quality of life of the people that are here, and that includes through childcare, through employment, through housing, through all the things that we're talking about. One of the things that, anecdotally, again, coming back from Los Angeles, big city, everybody is kind of working to pay their mortgage or their rent. Who knew that in a few years, Indiana would be in that same place, right? But what I noticed, and I would tell people in LA all the time, I'm like, I'm going back to visit my family. I do this every year. It's my reality check, because Indiana was real. LA was a lot of facade. And I came back here, this is real. And then what I would see is people lived for the weekends. Like you would see them out and they would be at the parks with their family. They'd be at the ponds, they'd be on the trails, they'd be, all these different places. I could see that. Well, over the last few years, that's dwindled. Fewer and fewer and fewer people have the time. They're doing, especially younger generations, they're doing 2 and 3 jobs. The gig economy. There was in this one time, like these companies coming in and demanding tax abatements and tax deferments and all these things, so that they say they're bringing in jobs, but what they're doing is then they're hiring temp workers with no benefits. That's not investing. My tax dollars are then what? Like, no, we need ethical business. We need ethical business.
Right. So I want to say, to bounce off of you, Michelle, about these businesses getting these tax abatements. Businesses get millions of dollars in tax breaks in Indiana, but what happens is these businesses will send their grunt work to Indiana, where the people who are getting paid the big bucks, their corporate headquarters are going to be in another state. And so that's what we're getting. We're getting scraps from corporations into our state. Like, here, we know you Hoosiers will work these jobs, and it is because of our rankings, because of our quality of life, our access to education, our access to healthcare. All of these things have compounded it and made us a horrible place to live for some people. And yeah, these good big corporate businesses with shiny fancy things, they don't want to bring people here. Their people don't want to move here.
Actually, Michelle took the words out of my mouth. I was saying Indiana, we're known for what? Business. We're known for infrastructure. But again, those are the corporate people. Those are the wealthier people. And so then you have on the bottom, you said it well, Michelle, when you separate it, we're up here on, these issues, and on the bottom where the people matter. And so how do we address that? And we are, I find myself thinking sometimes, do I need a second job? Especially when my son son now in college, and I'm thinking, oh my God, and the nerve of you to think that you should run for office. But it is the real people and the touch points that matter. The things that we have been talking about this evening are things that matter. Why? Because either one, we've experienced them, two, we know someone who's experienced them or experiencing them. These are things that have not gone away, and it just seems to keep getting worse. That jokingly I say, why do we even live in Indiana? Like, why are any of us just picking up and going somewhere else? But then there's that constant that mindfulness that I have that says somebody has to stay. Somebody has to stay here and fight for the people who are here, because I'm often told, Erika, you should just move south, go back where your husband's family is. And I'm like, nope, my family's here. And I get to see their struggles, and some of their struggles are my struggles. And so, I do hope that we're able to create this change. You said it, if we can just imagine, to me, everything that the Republicans have done, they think in isolation. They have an answer for one problem, but they're not looking at how things are connected. When you make a decision, about housing, you also need to make a decision about income. You often have to think about how much people are bringing home per hour. You also have to think about healthcare. Like, nothing is in isolation. Everything is connected. And until we begin to think about people in that way, there won't be change.
Well,
Absolutely. I appreciate you, Erika. Just to bounce off that, change has to happen with policy, right? Change can happen with policy change. And because of the isolation, it has become a domino effect, right? I know this is the Economic Issues Panel, right? However, let's be clear, when you talk about the SB1, the economic issues and crisis that it has created, right? And so SB1 is the abortion ban. But again, the legislators that passed that didn't think about, are we as a state ready to respond to the influx need of housing, of employment, of childcare, of providers, of social workers, case workers, right? Are we going to give more money to FSSA? I mean, I was a CASA volunteer. I did home visits.
Yeah,
Right.
they believe in trickle down, so that it's magically going to happen. It hasn't happened since the 80s, but that it's magically going to happen at any moment.
Right. So, it's thinking about the bigger picture, right? It's moving under assumption that every home can afford it, or every child is loved, right? Every child is not abused. I mean, there's realities that are happening, right? And so because it creates a volume in terms of that, I'm sorry, my dog, but I wanted to say, we may be a red state, but we have the opportunity to change this. We have the opportunity to make it happen. And I apologize because he's mad. I'm gonna try to quiet his down.
I don't believe that we're a red state. We've been gerrymandered and kind of led to believe we are. But I think when you look at the actual numbers, if we ungerrymandered, we'd find we're very purple. And one of the things when you talk about the abortion ban, what about all the 44 per 100,000 mothers die in Indiana? We are the 47th most dangerous state to give birth in. And what about when the mom dies and then there's no one for the family? And again, you are so spot on in that these legislators didn't think about any of this. But again, they still believe in trickle down. So, they are a little bit disconnected from reality.
I think they're also, when we went up to the State House to advocate for pregnant worker accommodations, and to be clear, that is literally, can they have a break? Could they have a stool? Could they, if the doctor says they can't lift over a certain weight, that's respected? And we could not get movement on that. The best we could do was an anemic one that said, oh, a woman won't get fired. Well, for bringing a doctor's note for an accommodations, and that's already at the federal level. So it's like, this is ridiculous. And when we talked with some of these, and these were women legislators, and we was like, what's going on? And they said, well, that's the best we can do. We can't do the heavy lifting. And I'm just like, excuse me? And I think that a lot of that is again, they are committed to the party and not the people.
Mm, mm.
And we were finding that with regard to the worker accommodations, the biggest pushback was the American Manufacturing Association and the National Chamber of Commerce, even though the Indiana Chamber of Commerce was for it and the governor was for it. So when you've got national players coming in and influencing, because exactly what you're saying, they're wanting it to bring in the low wage jobs. They want to just, they want those workers, and there's got to be, where's the advocates for people? If it's not in our state house, if it's not in our local government, and and at the federal level, it's like, where does that come from? And charity can only do so much. Charity isn't made to build the infrastructure. And so I think that's where I love seeing more and more women running for office, bringing their stories, their lived experience of things, and saying, you're putting laws in place and you're not looking at the unintended consequences. And especially if you're coming from it from a punitive thing, like everything has got to be some kind of a judgment and whatever, that's going to have a whole host of problems, which we are seeing out of SB1, which is, we're losing healthcare professionals and OBGYNs, and we have maternal deserts, right? So it's a whole host of things.
There
too much.
is. I just wanted to say this one thing. Sorry, my dog was barking earlier, but I feel like there is good news right now, right? I want to bring some good news. The good news is this: if we have individuals that come out and vote these people out, we have an opportunity. The truth is, Indiana is 50th in the nation for voter turnout. That's why it's red.
Yep.
Right. And so
Yep.
in 2020, in the 2020 election, the last presidential election, 59% of registered voters voted. 59%, right? So if you come out and you vote, you grab 2 people, 3 people, come out, right? And pay attention to who's on the ballot, 5 people. 5 plus 5, right? And come out. We have the opportunity right now to change things for our state. That's the good news. Right? But you have to show up and you have to come out, because it just doesn't stop with being registered. You have to activate your vote. You have to come out, right? And actually hit submit. Right? And so, I mean, again, that is the good news. It doesn't always have to be like this, but we need everybody to come out. We need everybody to show up, because you are important to the process.
We're also 4 House seats away from flipping the House, the
Yep.
state House. 4.
Yeah, we've been telling everyone, like, for voting, first of all, early vote if possible, right? That's good for us. Then we can start working on getting those people that maybe forgot or weren't going to. And it's 5, 5 friends, make a lunch date, go vote, and then, branch out and try and get some other people to do that. Make voting fun again. And hopefully, that can motivate people to, peer pressure, I guess, but positive peer pressure, not bad peer pressure.
I have a question for y'all. Do you recall ever there being a rite of passage when you turned 18 to go vote?
Yes. It was a big deal.
Big. I
Yeah.
drag my daughter in her baby carrier, and I'm only like 5'3", so it was literally dragging her, to vote. And my mom did the same thing.
Yeah. But then when you think about them trying to take certain subjects out of school, it's the why. What's behind that? Why wouldn't you want to talk about world history? Why wouldn't you, what happened to civics? What happened to those conversations, those subjects that slowly dwindled away? So Michelle, when you bring that up, you also have to think about what were we being taught during those times at school. We were excited about turning 18. It was not just the big deal of, 16, I can start driving. 18, I'm grown, I'm out the house. We were excited at 18 being able to vote. And so bringing back that excitement. You said, make voting great again. That's the one thing we can make great again. Let's make it fun, and let's make that great again. Instead of talking about making America great again, make voting great again.
Well, and Katrina, to piggyback on your good news too, I heard in Johnson County they did an event, and there were like 200 Gen Z that showed up to register to vote. Like, so hearing those kinds of stories, and I think we just need to amplify it on social media. If you go to a thing and you see people and they're excited to register, build that up, because I think there's a lot of people that are wanting to celebrate. And it's almost feels like everybody's just kind of waiting. Can I do it now? Can I do it? Can I? Yeah. So yeah.
It should just be a part of education. If Republicans were really great and they're introducing these new diploma process, why not put in there, make sure that all students who are turning 18 register to vote? We never said what side they're voting, what party.
Right.
We just want to give them a right that is available to them. It should be. And so if it didn't come from the home, we teach everything in school anyway. So if it's not coming from the home, teach it from the school. Every student should register to vote. Before you get to graduate, you should register to vote, at least so that you can do your due diligence.
That would be lovely. And as you see in other states that have high turnout, they're doing things like that. They're introducing the concept of voting to high schoolers and college students. They're sending out literature about people's ballot options. And, you know, they're not doing that here. So we see that that is really very effective. I do want to let people know that MADVoters is doing a series of civics labs across Indiana from now until the elections. And the idea behind this is to get people who may have missed out on that education, get them educated, but not in a way that pressures them or guilts them or shames them. This is these are family-friendly events. We're going to be offering really easy to understand information, having other organizations and groups there to also give resources for the community. We feel as though if we can get these people connected in their little communities with the groups and organizations and people doing the good things, they will get involved themselves. They will start paying more attention, and it all leads back to policy.
That's good.
Yes. So we invite everybody to join us. I want to thank you all so much again for being here tonight, for giving us an hour of your time on a Tuesday night. This was a great conversation. It was so lovely hearing all of your personal experiences and really the heart and passion behind all your reasons for running. I can't vote for you guys because you're not in my district, but I would personally be proud to vote for any of you wonderful ladies.